If you were to exercise for 30 minutes a day, but then sit for 10 hours, you are basically canceling out that 30 minutes of exercise.
It's kind of easy not to move around. You don't have to move around. You have a computer screen to look at, a phone to look at. It seems to be important that individuals take time for themselves.
There's ways to still incorporate movement into your day, even if you have to be in front of a computer.
Welcome on in to the Health Elevated podcast. I'm Dr. Fowers, joined by Dr. David Hedges, and we have a special guest today, Cami Flygare. Cami, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, just briefly? I know you're into wellness and helping big companies like Intermountain Health to help their employees be healthier in a sedentary lifestyle. But yeah, tell me a little bit more. What are you up to?
Yeah, I'm a health promotion and wellness manager for Intermountain Health, and I am part of the corporate wellness team. So trying to improve the overall well-being of our employees by getting them moving more, helping them move towards positive lifestyle behavior change in any way that we can. I focus specifically on physical activity and health coaching.
So in the United States, especially with the invention of computers, right? A lot of people's jobs have now become at a desk. And since COVID-19, now a lot of people are also at home. So there's kind of these elements of laziness that have entered into the workplace. But then there's also maybe a new element that we're not used to, which is kind of the loneliness factor, I suppose, because of the work from home. And I know that's kind of lightened up a little bit. But I want to know the sedentary lifestyle. How big of a problem is it, and what kind of health issues can it cause an individual?
Yeah, it really is a big problem. So many of us have transitioned from, jobs decades ago that were more physically active to sitting at desks. And it's around 80% of the population isn't getting the recommended physical activity. And only about 5% of the population is getting 30 minutes or more per day of physical activity. So being sedentary is if you sit for around 7 to 10 hours a day, and the average adult in the US is sitting for around 7 to 8 hours per day. So most of us are in that sedentary range.
Cami, I have a quick question. So you focus on kind of activity, physical activity, and wellness. What's the difference between physical activity in terms of wellness and working out on a regular basis, or is there? So if you work out every day, is that the same thing, or is there a difference?
Yeah, so exercise is going to be structured physical activity. So all exercise is going to be physical activity, but not all physical activity is exercise. So getting up and moving our bodies at any point can be considered physical activity, but it's got to be structured and a little more and a little longer for it to be considered exercise.
Should we be focused more on a structured exercise plan, or focused more on trying to increase the physical activity in our lives?
Yeah, so if you think of like a pyramid, we used to go by the whole food pyramid thing. We use a plate now. But if you think of a pyramid, the foundation of our movement should be general or incidental activity. And then the next level up is going to be that structured exercise. So if we go back to looking at like a sedentary lifestyle, we're increasing our risks for chronic conditions by sitting a lot. And if you were to exercise for 30 minutes a day, but then sit for 10 hours, you are basically canceling out that 30 minutes of exercise to a certain extent. Like that threshold of sitting for 10 hours is still going to increase your risk, even if you're getting 30 minutes of exercise per day. And so that's why it's so important for us to continue to move throughout the day, regardless if we have a desk job or not, regardless if you're getting a 30-minute workout in the morning. We want to be interrupting our sitting as much as we can. So for example, 1 minute of moderate to vigorous physical activity or 3 minutes of walking counteracts about 15 minutes of sitting. So if we can just interrupt our sitting, even if we just stand up, if you have like a standing desk or march in place or just do something to get up and move throughout the day, that's still considered physical activity. It doesn't have to be structured exercise. Now, of course, if you're training for something, if you're trying to increase your cardiovascular fitness, yeah, you're probably going to need some structured exercise in there to reach those goals.
So I'm thinking about healthy behaviors, because I guess that's one of the things I'm passionate about, kind of my area of study, if you will. And this is kind of the opposite of that, because it's a unhealthy behavior, a bad habit, maybe even addiction, right? Where we're kind of addicted to sitting down and not moving. And, you know, we all live in today's society, right? It's kind of easy not to move around. You don't have to move around. You have a computer screen to look at, a phone to look at, and it's probably only going to get worse with, you know, VR headsets that are coming out. Then you can feel like you're outside without actually standing up all day. You know what I mean? And so this seems kind of like an uphill battle, because not only are you trying to introduce the healthy behaviors, but you kind of have to have those replace the unhealthy behaviors of staring at a screen all day. And so I kind of see this as two different sides. There's the one unhealthy aspect of you're not moving enough. But then there's kind of like the mental health maybe aspect, and who knows what else, from just staring at a screen for a long time. I wonder, do either of you think does it all blend into the same and so it doesn't really matter? Or is there kind of like a uniqueness to the screen time as well as just being lazy and not moving? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think we're constantly looking for distractions, right? And so the screens, our phones, things like that are really easy ways to distract ourselves. And it's kind of just shifting your mindset a little bit into, okay, what else could I be doing that might be more effective during this time that I need a little distraction? Because it is hard for us to focus constantly. And then I want to piggyback on top of what you mentioned about the mental health piece. My new favorite study came out last year, and they found that physical activity was 1.5 times more effective at managing anxiety and depression than counseling and medication. Now, not to say that counseling and medication are still very important. It's just that we can add physical activity as an evidence-based intervention when it comes to mental health conditions. So it's not just our physical health, it's our mental and emotional health that physical activity can really move the needle on. And like you said, I'm talking about physical activity instead of exercise, because a lot of people just think of that structured exercise and it feels really prescriptive. Like we think about the CDC recommendations of 150 minutes of moderate intensity activity per week, and then we need to be getting it. And that can feel like it's just too like check the box, one and done kind of thing, rather than part of our lifestyles. And so if we can incorporate movement more just into our lifestyles, we're going to be a lot more successful, because, you know, one of my favorite mantras is the best exercise is the one you will do. We all tend to think that we have to be a runner because we've heard running so good for us. Well, no, we should be doing what works best for us. We should be doing what we like to do, and incorporating into our lives in just a really simple, meaningful way, instead of being like, okay, I've got to go to the gym. got to change my clothes. Then I'm going to get sweaty. Then I'm going to have to shower.
Yeah.
And it becomes these sticky points for us constantly.
So how can we make this sustainable? So let's just take me, for example. I'm kind of a, entering middle-aged, mostly grumpy, sit at a desk all the time. I might work out in the mornings. Maybe I'll get stretched around a little bit, walk a little bit around at lunch. And my evenings are usually, running to and fro with the kids, trying to figure things out, trying to get the house cleaned up, ready for bedtime. What are ways that I can increase my physical activity throughout the day in a way that makes it sustainable?
Well, I would first ask you why you want to increase your physical activity. Why is it meaningful to you?
Why do you, David? Let's ask him that.
Why? Well,
you
I
look
want to
like
be
you're
healthy.
in great shape.
I mean, maybe.
But I know you run a lot already, but you want to run more.
Yes, but the way I would just learn that my running is undone. The benefits of my running are undone by my sitting abilities. So I want to try to be healthier. Generally, I want to be able to live an active life and a healthy life as long as possible. I'm not necessarily just live as long as possible. I want to be active and be able to participate in the activities that bring me joy and meaning for as long as possible.
Perfect. Yeah, that's your why for moving more, is so that you can live the life you want to live and do it with the people that you want to do it with. And so by identifying kind of the why and thinking about, well, why is physical activity important to me? That's kind of the first step in moving towards those better behaviors. And then the next step would be, okay, well, what do I like to do? Or what can fit into my life a little bit better? If I am at my computer, can I stand up for 2 or 3 minutes and do like 10 squats? Can I get outside a little more often? Can I just change my environment? Is there a sport that I used to like to do, or one that I want to do more now? Everybody should go try some pickleball. It's a great way. It's a great way to get your social and your physical. That's why it's so popular. So that would be my first questions is, what do you want to do? Why do you want to do it? And then start with some baby steps, because it's all about experiments, right? Like you try something out and it like that. Well, you don't have to do it. Try something else until you find a recipe that fits for you. And a good thing is just to have options. Like if I want to go on a 15-minute walk in the morning on a break, but something comes up that takes priority, well, maybe I should just do it later.
Hey, man, I have so many thoughts and I don't know where to start. I guess I'll start here. So one of the opportunities I had in doing research was to look at this walking study, which was very interesting. So they recruited a bunch of people from all different walkable areas. Some people had good sidewalks, some people didn't, for example. From all different fitness levels, they randomly assigned different interventions to try and help these people get into a walking habit. And what I found in studying this data, trying to understand the mechanisms behind who was able to maintain it long term, and we're talking like a really long time, because a lot of these studies, unfortunately, they do an intervention, they might have a follow-up, they might not. It's kind of short-lived. But this one, the intervention lasted for a year, and then we had a full year afterwards to see what they were still doing. So who actually changed because of the behavioral intervention. And the interesting thing is, when it comes to walking, and I've seen this in the data, though, that it really depends on what behavior we're talking about. Those who were walking, taking time out of their day for the purpose of exercise, quote unquote, were the ones who were able to sustain it and create a habit long term. Those who were doing it more out of convenience, maybe I'll just walk to the bus stop or something instead of driving my car. Or maybe I'll park a little bit further away and walk into the grocery store, which are great things to do. However, it seems to be important that individuals take time for themselves. And I kind of want to bring this back to the mental health aspect, because I think that's one of the bigger challenges that's facing people in the Mountain West in the United States, right? Because mental health depression, anxiety have seemed to skyrocket. And that's kind of why I was bringing up like the screens earlier, because I think we have two problems: the obesity, but then also the mental health, and they might be kind of related in some sense. But David and I were talking about this pretty recently, because so David's a great example of someone who has like a good running habit, right, David? And until the snow comes, yeah, because you like to run outside. But one of the benefits that I think David gets that I kind of hadn't really thought about, I guess, until kind of recently, is I think while he's running, he's probably getting a meditation session in, if you go, because he's taking in nature. And you correct me where I'm wrong, David, but you kind of like just to not listen to anything, just to run, be in the moment. And that's mindfulness meditation, you know? And so there's kind of like this double benefit to doing it for the purpose of exercise. And maybe that explains the result I found in that research, is if you're just doing it out of convenience, you might not be getting the meditation part of exercise. But if you're doing it to like take time out for yourself, where you can kind of like zone out a little bit because you're not just trying to get to the grocery store or the bus stop or whatever, that seems to have some mental benefits. And I kind of want to see what's your reaction to that, Cami and David.
Yeah, I really like that you brought that up, because getting started small really is a segue into creating more space for yourself with a more structured program. Like it's the sneaky way to start a physical activity program and then realize the benefits of it, and then it motivates you. You start stacking better behaviors on top of it once you start a small one. And so I totally agree with you that yes, we need these like activity snack sessions, but we should also be setting aside larger amounts of time for our own self-care, including exercise. Like, I'm one of those people that getting outside, being in nature, and exercising is a key component. It's like my therapy. It's my physical, my mental, my emotional, everything. So I'm a cyclist. I like to get out on my bike several times a week. And when I can't get outside on my bike in the winter, I go skiing. So I think you've got to find a recipe for finding that place that gives you that physical stress, but the emotional release at the same time. So I like that you brought that up, because we do still need to have a structured self-care regimen. It shouldn't be super hard to get it started. And then once we start realizing the benefits, it doesn't feel so hard, then maybe our sessions get a little longer, and then it does become more structured.
Interesting. Well, I never really thought about it before you mentioned it, because we were talking about it a little while ago, but I suspect that very much for me, it is a meditation session. I don't really know much about it. I don't know much about mindfulness. I don't know much about meditation in general, but I can say that when I'm out running, I'm pretty zoned out. I really don't know much. I don't necessarily remember where I go on runs. I kind of have the same routes that I take, and I often don't remember getting from one point to the next point because I'm just kind of zoned out. So, I mean, I don't know if that's just being completely spaced out and just kind of my own little, just off on the z-axis somewhere, or if that's a form of meditation mindfulness. I'm not really sure. But I was wondering, so I often run quite early because my kids have to get to school and I've got to be back to help with that. So I go out pretty early. Does it matter what time of the day you'd have that kind of structured program? So would it be more beneficial if that were middle of the day or end of the day? So after, I guess before the main stressful events of the day, should I be out exercising and kind of fortifying myself against those for both the mental health aspects as well as some of the physical? Or should I interrupt the main stressful events of the day with the exercise, or wait till they're mostly past and then move on?
So my suggestion would be whenever it works best for you. I'm more of a morning person, so if I'm going to go out on a bike ride, I'm going to do that in the morning. But there's other types of physical activity that I like to do, and I do them later in the day. But I've got to adapt to my own schedule. So number one, you do it when you can fit it into your schedule. But if you look at certain chronic conditions or cardiometabolic risk factors like diabetes, high blood pressure, things like that, the research has shown that if you do 3 10-minute movement sessions after meals, it reduces the risk of those chronic conditions. It decreases the risk of those cardiometabolic risk factors. So it kind of depends on who you are and what your situation is. But if you're going to get like a one chunk exercise session in, most people perform better late afternoon, early evening. But it really does matter on you and your life and where you can fit it in and what your goals are. So there's a lot of things to consider in terms of the timing. Now, you don't want to be exercising like 2 hours before bed. That'll mess with your sleep, like body temperature, cortisol levels, all that. So just get your physical activity in at least 2 hours before bedtime. So you might be a little more sensitive to it. Maybe for you, it's 3 or 4 hours before bedtime. Again, you just got to fit it in where it is. But if it's messing with your sleep, that's not a good thing because, sleep is sacred. You've got to get your sleep in order to perform well in any way at all.
Yeah. So restating your answer, it really doesn't matter. Just make it so it's consistent and sustainable is kind of what it comes down to.
Right. Yeah, it needs to work for you. You can't fit a square peg into a round hole, and that's what sometimes people try and do, and then they fail, and then they're frustrated.
Sure. Makes sense.
In my view, the benefit in the long term really comes down to movement or not. But we've kind of touched on this a little bit about the difference between, moving throughout the day versus one giant bout of exercise. And I guess the answer is both are important, right? You need to get some exercise, but then you can't be sitting there all day either. But what do we say to the people who might be listening who think, I can't get up, I'm busy at work, I'm not allowed to get up. I don't have 10-minute meetings I can go to that my work provides for me that allows me to get up and stretch. What do we say to those people who might be more skeptical of the idea that you can just get up and take these mini breaks every so often?
Well, you can still work and move your body, right? Like I could still stand up for 5-10 seconds, move around a little bit, do some stretches. There's ways to still incorporate movement into your day, even if you have to be in front of a computer. I'm sure nobody would think it was weird if you, after 30 minutes, stood up, do a few stretches, and sat back down. There's ways to work that movement in to your day that won't feel like you're taking away from what you're doing. And hopefully you have a lunch break or you have some morning and afternoon breaks that you could throw some activity snacks into. 2-3 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever you can get. Do you think that sounds like something realistic for most people?
I mean, I do. Yeah.
That probably depends on the day.
That's
for me.
true.
I mean,
it depends on how busy.
Some mornings I'm in back-to-back meetings for 4 or 5 hours at a time, and an activity snack would be hard. Although I guess I could be creative and figure out how to stand up and stretch during a meeting, and it's not hard. Just do it. Is like what it comes down to. So.